Hi everyone, welcome to FtBCon3. This is the continuation of our SSA track, and it's the Secular Safe Zone Ally Training with Pete. So I'm going to be around to take questions from the chat room at the end. If you'd like to find the chat room, just go to our website at ftbcon.org and click the link to the chat room on the right. So go ahead, Pete.
All right. Starting screen share. Whoa. All right. As Mary said, I am Peter Zupan. I'm the Student Program Specialist and the Secular Safe Zone Coordinator for the Secular Student Alliance. For those of you who came to hear my other talk, just to let you know, that actually happens at a different time. So we'll just get moving along. So what is the Secular Safe Zone and what does it do? It creates safe spaces for secular and questioning students to explore their identities. It's based off of the same ideal as the LGBT safe zones in regards to creating a safe space to a marginalized identity, but each is unique in their target demographic and how to best serve them. We use allies and facilitators to provide direct support to students who are trained using proven techniques and research to ensure the program's effectiveness. It also helps normalize the non-religious at your institution by simply being present. The program helps not just students, but the community overall. There's an increasing need for secular safe zones because the youth are on the rise. The percentage of youth who do not identify with any religion are growing rapidly. This graph of aggregated data from a 2012 Pew Research Center poll shows that it's between 32% of 18 to 29-year-olds, making it the second largest making the secular worldview the second largest identity in America after Christianity. The younger the population group, the less religiously affiliated they are. However, despite this growth, acceptance is growing with it. It is a very theonormative society, meaning it has high religiosity to the point of expectancy. People ask, what church do you go to, instead of how are you? Religious advantages are prevalent. The religious majority has built a very accommodating and insulating society for themselves. And there is considerable distrust of atheists and negative attitudes. One study at the University of Michigan even showed that the majority of Americans are more likely to trust you with any amount of religiosity, even if you don't share theirs. This theonormity can make life for a secular student very difficult. Students face harassment and discrimination for questioning religion or identifying as openly religious, such as Amanda Scott, who was threatened for agreeing with a proposal to add a state-funded plaza plaque which said, "In God We Trust." They lack the institutions and communities to support them. For instance, there's over 2,600 accredited universities in the United States. There are only 300 Secular Student Alliance affiliates. And the lack of access to the resources necessary to decide for themselves what role they'll have in our society. During a time of questioning, students can feel alone and don't know who to turn to. The Goodman-Mueller study made several recommendations for atheist-specific programs at schools and universities, especially in our case, to add atheist-specific safe space programs and to normalize and validate atheism. In order to have a successful secular safe zone, we need allies at these institutions. Allies can be just about, we encourage educators, community leaders, scout leaders, business professionals, religious leaders, and even resident advisors at dorms to participate. In short, anyone who has a leadership or authority role or works with students can be an ally. Also, they can be religious or secular. In fact, we highly encourage the religious to become a part of the Secular Safe Zone program. Allies must be able to demonstrate being a role model, openly showing that it's okay to be non-religious. They need to be trustworthy, able to provide a safe space to discuss harassment or bullying when they feel vulnerable. They must be knowledgeable with access to resources or services for students in need. And they need to be someone who can understand, empathize, and provide an open listening environment for students. We've come up with several expectations to ensure that you can meet these criteria. All allies are required to display their poster. It's downloadable from a website or it's downloadable from our website listed at the bottom, secularsafezone.org. This is so that you can be easily identified as an ally and possibly be found by accident on campus or your institution. You have to be able to show that you've been educated about the secular safe zone and it can apply your knowledge. You also have to obey the law. That should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Never out anyone. The strength of this program is only as good as the trust students can put into it. Be a listener and put the students' needs first. Be responsible and promote and report all bullying. And within the scope of the program, never engage in romantic, sexual, or physical activities with students. This is another one that should go without saying, but I'm especially saying it. Meet with students only in a professional space or public meeting areas. Please don't take them to your house or apartment. Contact us with any questions. I can be reached through the email at the end or found on the SSA website if you need anything. I'll do my best to reply within a business day. Secular students are a diverse and largely unorganized group. In this section, we'll discuss issues regarding secular students such as religious advantages, myths and stereotypes, and young adult psychological development. The religious majority have many prevalent advantages. For example, state holidays coincide with the religious and most often Christian holidays. There's no days off for Darwin Day, even though we do get December 25th off for Isaac Newton's birthday. Religious icons are safe to wear without reprisal. In fact, the ACLU has fought several cases for students to wear crosses and even anti-LGBT t-shirts. Sectarian prayers are seen as normal in many public functions, including within government, and are now legal thanks to Greece versus Galloway. These may seem benign, however, they add up to the detriment of secular students. How are they affected? They face exclusion from social or public events and groups. For example, the Boy Scouts have accepted LGBT Scouts, but are still officially a Christian organization, even though it depends on each individual how they're going to deal with minority religions. They don't feel welcome among peers, and sometimes teachers, as did one student in Monte Vista Middle School, who was reprimanded for not saying the pledge. They can be mocked, harassed, bullied, or even for openly identifying as non-religious, such as in 2006, when Nicole Smalkowski was kicked off of her basketball team and suspended for not joining the team's prayer circle. That's her standing on the outside. Their identity can be invalidated. Friends or family will say that it's just a phase, they're just angry, and they're not often viewed in the public eye. 7 state constitutions still say that atheists can't hold office, and recently several politicians walked out while an atheist gave an invocation won by the right of Greece versus Galloway. These are sustained by various myths and stereotypes the religious have about the secular. Secular students face a great deal of pressure against these myths and stereotypes about the non-religious, such as atheists have no morality, are always angry, aren't patriotic, and so on. This misinformation makes discrimination against secular students easier by portraying them as immoral. For example, Steve Harvey often asks what atheists' moral barometer is. They can be seen as dangerous, such as one study that found that the religious see atheists as outsiders whose existence threatens the good behavior and morality in society. They can be portrayed as confused, back to just a phase, or that they're just rebelling. No atheists in foxholes is especially popular to stay in the military and has caused a slew of problems at the Air Force Academy. There are 20 of these myths covered in the resource guide for allies. Look through them and be ready to dispel them at any time. So this is a normal group participation, however, I'm just going to fill it in. Take a moment to think about a myth or stereotype you've heard about the non-religious. What stereotype have you heard? How did it affect the person it described? And what are some of the ways you could respond to offset that stereotype? So, for example, a couple weeks ago when I took my car in to get fixed, on the drive home while I was for it to get repaired, the driver asked what I did. I told him I work for the Secular Student Alliance, and he said, "So, you just don't believe in anything? You have no moral standard? And I had to tell him, yes, I do. I still believe in stuff like the golden rule. I still believe we should treat each other with respect, such on and so forth. These are the kind of stereotypes that can permeate through society. So what are young adults going through? We base our understanding of this off of Erik Erikson's models of 8 stages of identity development, particularly stage 5 fidelity. Adolescence is an extremely important developmental time. During adolescence, young adults explore their independence and develop a sense of self. They experiment with roles, ideas, and beliefs to find out where they fit into their life. And for those who receive proper encouragement and reinforcement will emerge from this stage with a strong sense of self and feeling of independence and control. For those who are prevented, they can feel stuck. They may remain unsure of their beliefs and desires and will feel insecure and confused about themselves in the future. Completing this stage successfully leads to fidelity, defined as the ability to hold to your beliefs and values in the face of problems. However, it's incredibly easy to knock adolescents off this path. Students are vulnerable, especially if they're experimenting with roles or ideas that don't fit society's norms. Students can be influenced greatly by outside forces, even to the point of discontinuing their searches if discouraged. That's why we need secular safe zones. Students need and deserve a safe space to develop their identity, whether they are religious or non-religious. It's also important to note that the secular safe zone is not an evangelistic opportunity. The time for the student to think for themselves, and we provide that space by creating places that are free from influence, allowing for self-reflection and discovery. To create these spaces, we'll detail various things such as normalization techniques, preventing harassment, and how to make your institution more friendly towards secular students. Normalization is simply the process of making the taboo normal. We found one very important thing to help achieve that. When atheists are seen as a normal, everyday part of life, people think that they're normal. The presence of an ally helps people do that by giving students and the community info about the presence of the non-religious. The Gervais study demonstrated that perceived prevalence of atheists reduced prejudice, testing 4 variables. In countries with higher proportions of atheists, the religious had less negative attitudes towards them that could not be explained away by other factors. Those who perceived atheists as more common displayed less anti-atheist prejudice. Those articles about high atheist prevalence compared to low atheist prevalence perceived that they came in contact with atheists more and showed less distrust towards them. And lastly, and this is a total shocker, those who read an atheist prevalence article versus one about their favorite food reduced distrust of atheists, meaning that some information is better than none. With this information in mind, there are still ways that you can help. For instance, include the non-religious in discussions, especially on worldview and religion. What are reasons for a secular and religious person to believe in the same thing, you could ask. Demonstrate that the secular worldview is a valid and reasonable way to live. Ask, how do you or others find purpose and meaning? Speak out about myths, misinformation, and harassment. Dispel myths in a non-antagonistic way. Non-complacency is not the same thing as hostility. However, nothing changes overnight, so we need to prepare instances of harassment towards secular students. Safe spaces are ones in which the students' rights are not being violated and safety is ensured. Allies provide both by watching for church-state separation issues and harassment. Students probably have no idea what the law says or doesn't and may feel like there is literally no one who will listen to them. You are there to take the kind of action students are not prepared for and to lend a credible voice to the administration. We hope civil discussion will solve these problems, but if you're not getting anywhere, there are legal organizations to help you. Please contact us at the Secular Student Alliance or the Freedom from Religion organization, or there are other groups such as Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Not everything can be solved legally, however, and that's when allies need personal involvement. Bullying is not just the overt stuff, but the things we do by not participating. Silence implies that a worldview is taboo and validates the harmful actions being done to the person. It's a tacit agreement with discrimination and their behaviors. One either agrees with what's happening or doesn't see it as a big enough problem to engage with. This is known as the bystander effect. So speak up about it. When we speak up, perception of the taboo is diminished. It takes away the impactful power of bullying. Discrimination is reduced, which reduces bullying overall, and it aids in growing the acceptance of differing worldviews. This is another participation point that I'm just going to run through. How might we speak up against myths, rumors, jokes, or harmful speech we might hear? So I'll just skip this part. Basically, you just have to confront people in a very calm and reasonable way. Act very ambassadorially. Just say, would you say the same joke if it was a black person? Would you say the same joke if it was a Christian? This can help people see that maybe it's not so cool to be saying this joke. As an ally, providing resources is important. Resources can be things such as information, like a book or a brochure to answer a question. Information is a passive resource, which is more in-depth and technical. However, it should not be used as a primary method of communication. You can also provide assistance to students, such as putting them in contact with their local Secular Student Alliance or the general community. You can find these resources such as in your own resource guide for allies, again, found on the website secularsafezone.org. You can find it in your local community, such as coalitions of reasons in almost every state, or check places like meetup.com. And of course, at the Secular Student Alliance or other movement organizations. If you're able to think of any more, write them down, apply them when you are yourself doing ally stuff. Another great way to provide resources is to provide strong community as well. They set up that social bond humans need so very much. As allies, we can provide community in several ways, such as holding weekly meetings for students who need it, organizing social events to bring students and community together. Facebook and meetup.com are great ways to do this way. Or help found a Secular Student Alliance affiliate. This will help them connect with people in their own age group and will form better connections. Now that we know how to create safe spaces, we need to tend to the needs of individual students. In this section, we'll detail how you can support secular students and come to understand them better. We'll go over such things as terminology, overlapping marginal identities, how to work questioning students, process anxiety, bullying, and supporting students dealing with resistance. Students use ourselves. This goes back to the matter of fidelity that by definition that's an atheist, and they may not want to use it. That's okay. It's important for us not to label them. There's lots of information here. There are 12 main terms in your guide and 8 symbols students may like to display. It's important to know the similarities, but more importantly, the nuances between them. Religions have multiple layers or levels to their identity. Marginalized identities are the identities inherent or gained, which society looks down on for any number of reasons. Multiple layers of oppression can occur with multiple identities. The more marginalized you are, the less social capital you have. This is defined as the expected collective or economic benefit derived from the differential treatment or cooperation between
We seem to have lost Pete, but let's see if we can get him back. Hey, you're back.
Hi.
Hey,
Where did I cut off at?
I actually don't remember, but you were talking about the terminology slide? Do you still have that up?
Terminology.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what you were talking about when it started to go a little fuzzy, so you can just start over right there, even though you
Okay.
cut off a little later.
All right. We'll start back here. All right. I'll just start at the beginning. Language students use to identify themselves is important. Our labels define ourselves, and it's important for us to decide.
Do you want to get your screen share up?
Oh, is it up? Sorry.
It's okay.
There we go. Start screen share.
Perfect.
There we go. All right. So our labels define ourselves, and it's important for us to decide what those labels are. This is a matter of fidelity. It's their label, and they need to choose it. Students may use a term differently than we may. What atheist or agnostic means to you may be different from how a student uses or understands it. Not every non-religious student wants to say atheist, even if by definition they are, and that's okay. We do not want to label them. We don't want to restrict their own process of self-identification. The resource guide for allies has lots of information here. There are 12 main themes in your guides and eight symbols students may like to display. It's important to know the similarities, but more importantly, the nuances between them. Students, both religious and non-religious, have multiple layers and levels to their identity. Marginalized identities are those identities inherent or gained, which society looks down upon for any number of reasons. Multiple layers of oppression can occur with multiple oppressed identities. The more marginalized you are, the less social capital you have. Social capital is defined as the expected collective or economic benefits derived from the preferential treatment and cooperation between individuals and groups. And I like to call it privilege money. So we'll go through a brief exercise. Bride and groom, super happy, super loving. However, each of them has a different level of social capital than the other. For one thing, America views males more favorably than females. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. It's just something that happens that we have to understand and fight. So already the groom has a bigger advantage over the bride. Our society also tends to view straight people in higher favorability to LGBTs. This is changing, which is awesome. However, this couple better advantage over most LGBT couples already. Whites are viewed more favorably than non-whites. In this case, the bride being black loses her social capital yet again. And finally, when it comes to religion and non-religion, as should be clear by now, religion is viewed more favorably than non-religion. So what do we see actually? The bride is religious and the groom is not religious. Even when he takes up this marginalized identity of atheism, he still is in pretty good hands. In fact, this is what we see in real life. A study by Barry Kuzman in the American Religious Identification Survey showed that white males are more likely to express their non-religion openly than are blacks, Hispanics, and women. So it's important not to pigeonhole people's identities. Some people might just not be able to afford that extra marginalized identity. As Bill Nye said, everyone is fighting a battle that you know nothing about, so be sure to understand that when dealing with students. And not all students who approach you are going to be certain about their worldview. They may just be curious, which does not make them any label that they don't want to choose for themselves. They're exploring their identities and beliefs, which leads back to fidelity. It's important for them to decide for themselves. As allies, we're there to be role models, to show the validity of the secular worldview, to provide guidance, such as assisting students in asking questions and getting access to the resources to answer them. Let students ask the questions as well. A huge problem is being filled with questions, having the fear of being judged for them. We are not there to be evangelists. Teach them how to think, not what to think, and do not try to convert or deconvert them. Help them think about their own worldviews and identity. Openly identifying as a secular student is a process that takes time and thought. This process can be best broken down into two areas: personal issues and interpersonal issues, otherwise known as being able to accept your own secular identity, self, or externally identifying, such as being open to others. Personal issues and self-identification can be caused by the myths and misinformation we've grown up with. As allies, we can provide access to resources and community, listen and provide a supportive environment, and ask questions that help students determine their own identity. Interpersonal issues are caused by anxieties, what the students believe will happen to them by others. Part of what might be holding students back from open, even if they want to, are some very legitimate concerns, such as losing their friendships, being rejected by their family, the loss of the only community they've ever known, rumors, gossip being spread around their school, abuse from their family, and even losing their job. These can lead to various anxieties, such as guilt and fear, social concerns, concerns for their own well-being, economic concerns, all of which can lead to self-harm, the very, very worst level of it. Recognize that these concerns are real possibilities and are all linked to each other. By creating a safe space, we can help alleviate these things by listening, asking helpful but not prodding questions, and respecting them and being empathetic to the student. We might not be able to fight the concerns because that's other people's problems. However, we can provide guidance to help alleviate the anxieties of students. For guilt, listen to their fears and understand that they are valid. It's not any more irrational to feel this way than to be scared during a movie. Only acknowledging and facing the problem can they get over it. For social concerns, acknowledge that losing friends is hard and they won't be able to pick themselves up right away. The friend may be intolerant, but losing them won't be any easier. Let the student talk, validate their feelings, and help them understand that there are communities out there for them. For physical, let them know that it is not cowardice to protect oneself. They can travel in groups or just be in visible areas. Also be sure to report any perceived aggression immediately. Am I still on air, Mary?
You're being a little choppy, but we can still hear you.
Okay. Every time I hear that little ding, I think maybe you're trying to reach me. All right, economic concerns. Under 18, parents have legal responsibility to provide food and shelter to students. However, you can call the authorities if any of this is denied to them. Acknowledge that it's okay to wait to come out until the student is financially stable. Losing these anxieties can help reduce the risk of self-harm. However, it deserves special consideration. As a secure safe zone ally, you are not expected to be a mental health professional. If a student is in need of mental health support, please do what you can to connect the student resources available at your institution. Always follow the institution guidelines concerning students and self-harm. In your resource guide, look at support organizations for religiously neutral professionals. These are things like Planned Parenthood, suicide hotline, etc. Always take the necessary measures at your institution has to prevent bullying, but as a safe space, there are still ways that you can help a student through bullying. Listen to them explain the whole situation how best they can. This means don't tell them to watch their language. Let them express themselves freely. And make sure not to slouch. How you present yourself while listening will impact how serious the student thinks you are about it. Be empathetic. This means you actually put yourself in their shoes and see things from their perspective and recognize the validity of the student's problems. Sympathy is different, as it means that you feel sorry for them, but can also mean that it doesn't really concern you. Figure out the cause of the bullying. This doesn't mean establishing who started it, but finding out from the student what initiated the confrontation. Again, follow the institution's guidelines. Let the student know you can report it if they aren't comfortable with it. However, it does need to be dealt with. It's very possible that you, as an ally, might face some resistance for setting up a secular safe zone from parents or your institutions. Just be sure to always validate the secular worldview and lead by example. Also provide the community for the students in need. You don't have to confront anyone that you don't wish to, but if you do, remember you're an ambassador and to act like it. If students are facing serious harassment or bullying, please report it to both your institution and the secular safe zone. Through it all, just remember, you are the hero the student needs and the one that they deserve. And congratulations, you're now a secular safe zone ally. Remember to fill out the ally registration on our website, again, secularsafezone.org. Read the resource guide available on the website. Tell us if you have any kind of questions at all. And get involved at your institution as a facilitator to train other allies and set up your own secular safe zone. Thank you again. My name is Peter Zupan. You can contact me through the email or phone listed below. You can also on the Secular Student Alliance website under staff if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Pete. I'm so glad you were able to stay with us despite some of the technical troubles that we had. While we wait to see if there are any questions from our chat room, would you be interested in sharing any stories insofar as you're able to from your own work, your work with students, your experiences giving this training to people who may not have been receptive, anything like that?
Sure. Are there any specific questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, you know, obviously this is all really useful information for us to have as, you know, atheists who support other atheists, but I'm wondering if you've ever given this talk to people who are religious and how they responded.
Actually, fun fact, this is the first public talk that I've yet done.
Wow, well, congrats.
However, I think Andy, thanks. Andy, when he was the coordinator, might have, but I personally haven't. However, I'm very much looking forward to the time when I actually can do that.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any experiences just outside of your work with SSA and trying to sort of give this information to people and trying to get them to be receptive?
Yeah. During my time as a regional coordinator with the SSA, I did a lot of interfaith activities with people such as the Thomas Aquinas Institute. There was a local creationist thing on board. Basically, the biggest thing to realize is that they're humans too, just like you. Um, Talk with them just like a normal person, get to know them, and then and that's one of the biggest things about being open is that it's not just saying I'm an atheist, helping other people realize that atheists are normal people just like them. So once you establish that common ground, it's a lot easier to get the message across that being a secular person is okay, and then they're much more receptive to listening to these kind of issues.
Yeah, I found that to be very true as well. And I find that, like, framing things in terms of identity has its pitfalls, but it can also be really useful because no matter what your opinion on, we have a lot of these debates about, like, oh, are atheists privileged or are they marginalized? And it's difficult to tease out because, yes, they are marginalized, but the people who are loudest about atheism tend to be most privileged on, some of the other axes, like you were mentioning. So I think, like, presentations like this are really useful because they show that despite some of those privileges that atheists may have or may not, there are ways in which, academic environments or work environments can sort of subtly push us out a little bit.
Yeah. And also part of having like the sign clearly displayed is so that not just the privileged white people who are already a part of the atheist movement could find you, but also students who might be a part of a minority group could find you by accident and realize, oh, this is okay. This is someone that I can safely talk to. So having these kind of safe zones can really help these people who have maybe not bigger marginalized identities, but that are keeping them from being openly secular to their friends and family.
Mm-hmm. So I know you said this is your first one, but I assume you'll be doing more of these trainings.
Yeah.
In what sort of settings are they done, and who do you tend to target? Like, is it professors or older students, maybe?
Well, something that we're really trying to do is have these be institutional programs at universities. We have 3 such things at the University of Las Vegas. We have it at Cincinnati University and University of Central Florida. So the biggest thing we're trying to target are professors or people who have institutional roots at their universities or wherever this is taking place so that they can create their own program across the whole school. Again, we'd love to have anyone be an ally pretty much as long as they can fill the ally requirements, especially at religious places, but universities are currently the places that seem to be most receptive to this kind of program.
Mm-hmm. If you're able to share, have you done any trainings at universities yet, or have any universities implemented this as a practice? Or maybe are on their way to doing so?
Yeah, again, those 3 universities have institutional programs. They have multiple allies there. I haven't done one with a school yet to provide that whole system. Those were already established, though, when I started working with the Secular Student Alliance, and so far they seem to be really successful. A lot of them retained after the re-registration period, so it's really good to see that that's a program that's still very strong at these 3 places.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, what do you foresee as a challenge of doing these trainings, just in general?
Mostly just people realizing that it's a program that's important and one that they can actually get to. Part of what I found in all of the research I've been doing on atheism is that it's a very self-contained identity. You can go down the street and not know that that the person walking next to you could be atheist, they could be religious or something. So a lot of people don't even realize that this kind of thing is needed at their university. So the hardest thing is to get people to realize, yes, this is important, and we need to actually put these on at our universities and make them not just a program that's going to die in a year after a student leaves or something, but something that a professor or advisor or the campus's uh, health and wellness department can actually keep for the long term to help students for years and years and years to come.
Yeah, that is definitely a challenge. When I was a student in undergrad, I definitely experienced this. You know, students would have these wonderful ideas and they would implement them, and it would work out even. And then that particular student or group of students would graduate, and there was just little institutional support for it to keep going. You know,
Yeah,
the administration provides all this funding and support to student groups, but that's not the same thing. That's like, oh, make sure to apply for your funds for this semester. It's not like, oh, you guys have been doing this really great thing. Are you going to keep doing it now that your past exec board has graduated? So yeah, you're right. Getting the actual infrastructure of the university involved in it, as opposed to just leaving it in the hands of a few, you know, dedicated and important but ultimately transient students might be better.
exactly. Secular Student Alliance affiliates, hugely important. I love them. They're probably the biggest, most influential force during my college years. This is a very distinct program from that in that it's to provide individual resources to students who may not yet be able to be a part of that community, who might still have to be in the closet or not open, so to speak. So it's still something that's very much needed, and we hope that anyone who wants to do this program is someone who can make sure that it can continue to live and grow in their own way. And something that we very much encourage facilitators and allies to do is to not just think that the training that you get, the stuff in the allies that you have to do that 1, 2, 3, 4, that's very black and white. We hope that the program grows and evolves to fit the individual needs of each place that it's being applied. So along with the things that allies are required to do, we hope that they take that extra step more and make it a very growing, thriving program at their thing. Very much unique to what you might find at the other campus that's doing it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can see this being really helpful for universities that have like a substantial, you know, majority of, you know, Christian religious conservative students. But I'm also thinking about, so for instance, my own undergrad, I went to Northwestern University. It was sort of very liberal in that sense of like, oh, we don't want to criticize anyone's beliefs, you know, everyone should do what they want. But the result of that was that there was often like a lack of substantial atheist community, and there was often a sense of like, if you came out as an atheist, people would expect you to basically be an asshole. And there's this sense of like, oh, but you're not gonna, you know, insult my religion, are you? And so I got a lot of like, oh wow, you're so nice for an atheist. So it's actually interesting because I didn't get any of this, you know, we didn't have like church-state violations, we didn't have, as far
Yep.
as I know, bullying of atheist students by religious students, but we did have the sense of like, oh, you're one of them. We don't really like that because we want everyone to, you know, have their religion and not get criticized. So yeah, it actually would have been
Yeah.
really helpful to know like where I could go and call myself an atheist without the response either being like, oh wow, I wouldn't have even guessed, you're so nice. Or on the flip side for it to be like, oh, well you're not going to start telling me how my religion is dumb, are you? And I'm like, no.
Yeah. And so that's what we hope allies will be, is that person who it's not like, oh, it's, yeah, this is a very normal thing for people to be like. Um, my first SSA group, or Secular Student Alliance affiliate, was actually called the Secular Students and Skeptics Society. We hardly ever concentrated on atheist things because I went to CU Boulder, which is the super liberal, very much, you know, wooey kind of place. And I didn't feel those kind of things, but living in Colorado, I live just a couple miles away from Colorado Springs, home to the Air Force Academy, super big mega church called New Life, and there it's especially needed because I knew the students down there, and they face this kind of thing all the time where they come out as atheist and suddenly there's a crowd of people coming around them just curious about this kind of stuff. So even if it doesn't specifically affect your university, you can still apply these teachings to tons of different places.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm actually learning that for a lot of people, it's, like you said, you don't even need to have a group where you're always talking about religion or atheism. It's about
Yeah.
being able to come to a space and know that, like, you and your lack of belief will be welcome there. And also, some of it is just like if I walk into, you know, a good
Yeah.
atheist group and I make
Yep.
a claim, I can expect for them to say, do you have any evidence for that? I like to be in an environment like that as opposed to in an environment where you could
Uh-oh.
just say, like, well, I really feel that this is how it is, and then to have that be taken seriously.
Yeah. So allies can definitely do that. And, to be an ally, you don't even always have to bring secularism onto the table for these students. You can just be a supportive person to listen to what's going on in their life, find out what's going on, and just a safe person that they can open up to and know that if somehow secularism slips from their tongue, it's not going to be the conversation changer and the friendship stopper and stuff. It's just going to be two normal people having coffee and talking about their week.
Hmm. I think the model of being an ally that you've presented here will also be really helpful to students who are questioning their religion because I had a moment like that. Like I used to be sort of spiritual-ish, and then that faded away pretty quickly once I got to college. But my freshman year, I went to our pre-SSA sort of secular group, and I found it to be so openly hostile to all of those ideas that I felt pushed away. Whereas going to an ally who's sort of like their point is neither to convert me fully into atheism nor is it to push me back into religion, it might be really helpful to talk to someone who actually listens to you and like meets you where you're at in your, maybe your journey of losing your religion.
Exactly. Like, I can remember my own first process coming out and didn't want to use the term atheist. I used the term deist for a long time because that seemed just a little bit more acceptable to people, and that's fine. We're not trying to deconvert people, which is part of why we hope religious people become a part of this, is because we don't want to make more atheists. We just want to help people understand themselves. So if they don't want to call themselves an atheist, don't call them an atheist. Just let them come up with anything. There's tons and tons of terms out there. There's going to be varying levels of comfort people have with them, like saying they're a freethinker, they're a humanist. Agnostic is one that I heard all the time, and that's okay. That's their thing, and that's what we need to encourage. And if they eventually do decide to go all the way and say atheist, that'll be a huge step towards reducing that stigma towards atheists, because sure, maybe all you've ever heard about in your whole entire life is people, religion. But then Doug comes out, and he's just this normal guy that you've known for years and years. He plays Xbox, does this stuff. Suddenly he's an atheist. Well, now not all atheists aren't huge assholes, and that's the ultimate goal of the program, is to not just help students, but to make it so that atheists are just the next identity. They're your next door neighbor. They're the person checking you out at the grocery store, and that's it. It doesn't mean anything else. So,
Well, we're just about out of time. Thank you so much for the training and for your perspectives. I hope that, you and the rest of the staff goes on to do a lot of good in this regard. So, thank you.
all right. Thanks, Mary.